Yeah, thank you. But Patrick Bet David actually called out Pierre Polyev that he wasn't going on these podcasts. He mentioned that, yeah, you went in on Jordan Peterson, which, in Canada, you and I know Jordan Peterson would be considered far right because he's just not communist,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? But for getting out your message, for cutting through the media bubble, right? It's really critical, especially in Canada, because what a lot of people aren't aware of right now is Justin Trudeau. One of his policies in the last few years was to actually subsidize the Canadian media. So they all effectively are government employees to some degree, or hybrid. They might work for private corporations, but their salary is coming from the government. And there's a clear conflict of interest. I mean, any of us who work in professional services would tell you it's a clear conflict of interest. Similar to like police officers who work for casinos, right? Like they're not going to be impartial if they're ever dealing with a situation.
Hmm.
Um, and same thing here. So Polyev had to basically, I know he's been doing more stuff with local media from what I'm hearing,
Yeah,
but that's not enough. Like you're right, there needs
yeah,
to be a footprint. And so what happened is Patrick Bet David, after he had this criticism, I'll share my screen now, and I want to play a clip here. Maxime Bernier, who's part of a fringe upstart conservative party called the People's Party, he decided he was going to go on Bet David's show instead. And
yeah,
so I want to play this clip here because I found it very interesting. This kind of captures what's going on as well within Canada right now with their election and Donald Trump.
yeah.
When I was in Parliament, he came in Ottawa.
He's
Great guy,
amazing.
great
He's
guy.
phenomenal.
Yeah,
Yeah. And when you ask him what is it to be a libertarian, boom, 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 boom,
yeah,
boom. You ask, what is it to be an American? I'm proud to be an American, or at least I know I'm free, right?
yeah,
And then you can sell America,
yeah.
right? What does it mean to be a Canadian?
We are not American.
What does that mean, though? But
Yeah,
not
yeah,
not.
yeah.
What are you guys?
That's
What
what
is Canadian?
that's what maybe Canadians. We are not American. We are Canadians. So okay, if we are not American, we are more for social programs. We care a little bit more about people. We have a socialist policies in Canada. So we have the way that the federal government or our politicians are speaking about Canadian identity. They're speaking about the legislation. It's, oh, we have our health care system is good. It's not like the US. It's not a private healthcare system. Everybody has a protection, but it's not going well. Here you have
And I'll stop there just for the audio sake. But I just wanted to kind of bring that up because I think that kind of captures the moment that Canada's finding itself in very well, Jeff, which is that, on the one hand, the one thing that, Trudeau was famous for saying about 10 years ago that Canada's a post-national society. Well, it got very nationalistic very quickly when Donald Trump's tariff and threats of annexing Canada, which again is arguably jokingly. When that came on the scene, they got very nationalistic again. But it also speaks to what you just said about Pierre Polyev not reaching and connecting with people, even when he was riding high in the polls, because the Canadian identity today, like what Maxime Bernier was saying on the program there, is very much the Liberal Party of Canada embodied. Like they've been criticized for years, and I think rightly so, that they basically identify themselves as the country.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think Maxine, hit a nerve there that I think is true. Is that I think the question is, if you go in Toronto and even Alberta and BC and asking what is a Canadian identity, like what is it? And again, a lot of times you would get comparisons to the US as opposed to an actual ingrained identity of what does it mean to be Canadian? What are Canadian values? What was Canada founded upon, right? I think a politician may give you platitudes, but if you kind of dig and dig and dig and dig, you do end up with we have social health care. We care about, like, well, I think every country, every liberal democracy will say the same thing. We care about healthcare, right? So I think there's a lot of truth there, and I think as a politician, and coming back to kind of what we're talking about, I think as a politician, you want to paint and describe that identity in a way that resonates with people, right? And I think that's something that Trump was able to do in the U.S. really well. Is that he spoke about an identity that resonated with the you know, the voters, and he swept the election. And I think that and again, I think Poilievre is a great speaker and he can do it. But I think he's also a politician, right? He, you know, one of the criticisms we've heard is that he's a lifelong politician, which is true. And I actually think that this is coming back. This is coming back to kind of bite him because it's showing some of his weaknesses, because he is a lifelong politician. So much as we may say we like him, but it's a fact, right? He's a lifelong politician. And his, you know, and he hasn't been able to properly pivot in his campaign against Carney. He's basically doing the same thing he was doing to Trudeau, but just replacing Trudeau with Carney. And it's like that may not work.